I'm Paul Graney. Now, with housing costs continuing to stretch family budgets, policymakers say solutions are within reach, but it will take changes at both the federal and local levels. Tommy Aiello with the National Taxpayers Union says smart policy and lower barriers to building could make homes and apartments more affordable for millions. Tommy, good morning. Thanks so much for coming on.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Tommy, housing can be a complicated subject, particularly pricing and costs. Can you summarize why housing prices are so high today for everyday Americans?
Yeah, housing is extremely complex, but it's also so stressful for so many families across the country, right? Mortgages, rental payments, they can account for about 30 to 40% of a monthly budget. So it's very expensive. So I think we need to bring housing costs down. The Federal Reserve plays a significant role in this. We're seeing interest rates come down. That's going to be a direct boon for renters and mortgage holders as well, whether they want a mortgage or refinance. Every percentage point in mortgage rates that come down, families can save about $200 a month. That's a lot of money.
But Tommy, is it the case that as interest rates come down and mortgage rates come down, sometimes the prices of houses tend to go up because people can afford to pay more on the principal on their mortgage, even though they're not paying it on the interest? The buyers will get them on the principal. Is that not the case?
That is the case. That is very much the case. But at the same time, we're seeing so much more single family homes come onto the market. When there's more supply, it generally keeps prices in line with that increasing demand. Now, on the multifamily side, those are your apartment buildings in cities and suburban communities across the country. Lower rates actually make it more affordable and more attractive for developers to come in and build more multifamily housing. That's really important for renters. And, as we look at solutions, the president's Working Families Tax Cut Act includes so many incentives for developers to build more housing. That's so important for families. But at the same time, we need to recognize that there's more the federal government can do, particularly working with local governments. That's where this big conversation around housing affordability centers.
Tommy, what are some of those new incentives?
Sure. So the Working Families Tax Cut Act, it made permanent so many important provisions, like the small business deduction for developers that are small businesses. It protected the corporate tax rate at 21%. And then it also expanded a number of deductions for developers, particularly the low income housing tax credit. All of those things together, plus regulatory reforms at the federal level, will unlock capital and make it easier for developers to build. That's obviously great news for developers, but ultimately that will translate its way down to consumers and people that need housing.
Are we already seeing builders take advantage of these new incentives?
We are. This year, we've actually seen the most number of apartment completions over the past 5 years. Permits are still pretty stagnant, but at the same time, we need to wait for the full tax cut to take effect. And I'm very confident we'll see more builders apply for more permits. So what does this actually mean for people, right? We've seen these hot housing markets in Texas, Tennessee, Florida over the past few years, people moving there. Rents in places like Austin, Texas, they're down 18% over the past few years. Why has that happened? A flood of new construction has resulted in significant more housing units. That's a great thing. But when we look at what the federal government can do, there's this really great bill by Congressman Mike Flood of Nebraska called the Identifying Barriers to Housing Stock Act. That basically says if localities want government funding to create affordable housing, they need to show how they're reforming their land use, zoning, and barriers to affordable housing. It's a really important bill. There's strong bipartisan support for it. And I really think a bill like that can make a meaningful difference to building more housing.
Well, let's talk about local policy then. Tommy, I'm not sure if you saw the New York City mayoral debate last night, but housing was a big point of discussion there. Anything you can weigh on in New York City, or are there other states or cities that are doing things better than New York and doing things particularly well?
Yeah, when it comes to housing, it's a tale of two countries. You have Republican areas actually wanting to work with developers, work with builders to bring more housing online quickly. And then you have cities like New York and Los Angeles and San Francisco that have really taken the wrong approach to it. In a place like New York, for example, where I'm from, it's so expensive to rent or buy a home. Why is that? Because they make it impossible to build. Just one example in New York, they recently imposed a new law on apartments over 100 floors, where if you build an apartment over 100 floors, you're going to have exorbitant more costs to build. So what we're seeing is a skyrocketing surge in the number of permits for apartments at 99 floors. They don't want to build over 100 floors, and that's where we can get more housing. So it's little things like that that make it so expensive. Los Angeles, they have parking minimums for every apartment unit you want to build, and a quarter of all of those parking units, they have to have electric vehicle chargers. All of that adds costs, time in order to bring more housing onto the market.
Right. Well, we hear about the regulations and the impact on the prices of houses all the time, Tommy. We're glad you can come and shed some light on it. Tommy Aiello of the National Taxpayers Union. Tommy, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.